much. That was beautiful. And
You notice I get the chair.
that was absolutely beautiful. And it's been an honor to get to know you over these last 2 years. You and Stephen, that's been actually the best part about this whole crazy turn of events. Was that? Oh, yeah.
Sorry. My husband, as you can see from the art on the wall, is a painter, an artist, but he is also a musician. And this afternoon, he's performing at the Gloucester stage in the production of Madame Lafarge. He's part of the little band that's part of the organization. But he wanted everybody to know that the paintings that are numbered here are for sale. And that any painting that's sold today would be 40% to Allison's campaign. Yes. So I'm particularly thrilled with this new piece that he did, which is a silk piece that's framed, and it really doesn't it look like a stained glass window? It really does. I think this is an exciting development. So anyway, he wanted to support you too, and maybe he'll come later.
Okay, that's amazing. You guys have been supportive in so many ways, and that's just yet another example of the creativity and passion, and just the way we can all bring everything we have and who we are to this process in our own way. That's kind of the whole point of what I'm about. So thank you so much, Isabella, and to you guys for opening up your stunningly beautiful home and garden, which I didn't really get a chance to see yet because of uncooperative weather. But yeah, to us today. Thank you. I'm so grateful to the really dedicated group of volunteers who brought this event to life today under the unbelievably outstanding stewardship of Stacy Ames and Mary Wasserman. I'm not sure where they are. Stacy and Mary have worked so hard with so many people to pull this amazing event together, so thank you. I'm so grateful to the elected officials who are in attendance here who give so much of yourselves to serve our community, and to all of you who came to support this campaign. I'm so truly deeply appreciative. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. So I'm Allison Gustafson. I live here in Manchester with my husband and 2 children, and I'm running for state representative because I have a vision for this district, and with your help, I will work every day to make it a reality. It's time. It's time for proactive leadership and new energy to address the issues that matter here, now, to all of us: education, our environment, and our economic and fiscal well-being. It's time for a change in representation because when we make room for new leaders, their fresh perspective reveals new ways to tackle challenges. It's time to identify a vision for our future and then create and follow a plan for achieving it. It's time to challenge ourselves to a higher standard as individuals and as a society, and to rise to that challenge in the spirit of collaboration, communication, and creativity, both inside the State House and right here in our communities. I'm a mother, I'm a taxpayer, a community volunteer, a former teacher, and small business manager. I'm stepping into this new leadership role because I believe wholeheartedly that it's not enough to prepare our children, to raise our children to be prepared for the world. We must also raise the world to be worthy of our children.
Hear, hear.
So the path that brought me here today was definitely not linear at all. But if public service is an opportunity to bring about the most good for the most people, I believe the best possible preparation is a life that opens our minds and hearts to the diversity of human experience and the pleasures of community. I believe that we're in the midst of a transition, unique in our history, and only if we choose to embrace it. It's the work of our generation, and it's about time. So if the shortest distance between 2 points is a line, then my path to this particular moment might best be described as the scenic route. For real. When I was preparing to graduate from the University of Michigan, I had every intention of heading straight to law school. I came from a family of lawyers, loved to argue, and had strong beliefs about how a just society should function. After extensive preparation for the entrance exam, I enjoyed that delicious sense of inner peace that comes with the certainty that one's life is mapped out, socially sanctioned, and ready to receive the Harvard seal of approval that would guarantee smooth sailing until the end of time. I'm sure you can see where this is going. So I didn't actually bomb the LSAT, at least not in the traditional sense. Things were humming along just fine until mid-question, I suddenly doubted the entire premise. Was I choosing law school, or was it simply a default? After several moments of mortal panic, I canceled my score, walked out of the building, and entered into a decade of uncertainty and discovery. Yeah, that's one way of putting it. I spent the summer in Colorado, moved to Prague to teach English, and then to New York City for a graduate program in English literature at NYU. And then there was 9/11. That blue-skied morning, as I emerged from the subway and started to walk toward my office next to the World Trade Center, the second plane pierced the tower above my head like a balloon on the end of a string. It was a moment of indescribable dislocation, followed by hours and years of personal and national confusion. I will never quite know the true impact that day had on me, but I am certain that the unforgettable moments of human contact I experienced throughout the ordeal, when a young woman grabbed my arm as we began our run, when a man reached over and hoisted me onto the Brooklyn Bridge, when an old woman embraced me as I collapsed into the seat on the bus beside her once I finally made it into Brooklyn, those moments revealed to me our deepest inclination to connect, work together, and support each other when the ordinary gives way to the extraordinary. The events of that day also caused me to reevaluate my own professional trajectory. As individuals and as a culture, would we respond to hate with hate, or could we instead prepare our children to become compassionate global citizens with the skills necessary to tackle complex issues? Education, I decided, was the antidote to the fear and vitriol I saw emerging in the aftermath of those attacks. I enrolled in an elementary education program with an emphasis on multicultural international education and spent a year teaching 6th grade in Cairo. When I came home to complete the program, I met Mark, my husband, and we both continued to pursue our careers as teachers. Which brings me, finally, to the North Shore, where Mark was born and raised, and where we have decided to make our home together. When our daughter Sonia was 2 months old, I had the opportunity to manage a family business, a commercial industrial office building in Peabody. The next 10 years became a crash course in accounting, business management, negotiation, tenant relations, and building systems maintenance. Although I couldn't have known it at the time, that training really prepared me to understand the intricacies of municipal government and the pressing infrastructural issues facing our selectmen and town officials each year. I definitely never imagined that the presidential election of 2016 would set me on a new course entirely. I'm sure none of us did. Shortly after that election, a group of former congressional staffers drafted a guide for grassroots resistance to the new administration's agenda. It was practical and inspiring, and after only a few short moments of deliberation, when it was shared with me, I created Essex County No. 6 Indivisible as a new and vigorous forum for civic engagement in our community. Our group started with 12 people in our living room and has grown to over 1,000 members. We were proud to be part of a national movement largely credited with stopping Trump care. But our focus was also intentionally local. We held monthly meetings with an average of about 75 attendees. We met with our representatives, made thousands of phone calls, and designed and implemented an innovative process for gathering community input that resulted in 2 passed amendments at the Democratic State Convention last year. I believe our biggest impact was one of tone and leadership. Many members had never before been politically active citizens, but have now woven political involvement into the fabric of everyday reality and everyday life. It's a shift that we cultivated together over the course of a year and a half, and the group is still going strong under new leadership. I believe wholeheartedly that when we encourage new leaders, the entire community is strengthened in the process.
Absolutely.
So if last year was about resistance, this year it's about representation. I am running for state representative because it's time. It's time to thank the 20-year incumbent for his service to the community, and now elect a new leader who views challenges as fuel for innovation. It's time to articulate and advance a vision for a future that inspires all of us to roll up our sleeves, get to work, and together make it happen for our families, for our seniors, for our children, and for ourselves. It's time to recognize that such a vision must include educational excellence for all children at every level. This is not only a moral imperative, it's also in the best interest of all Massachusetts communities. Everywhere I've gone, from regional school finance forum to meetings with school committee members to online groups of concerned parents, I've heard the same sense of desperation. Please fix the Chapter 70 formula for educational funding. It's incomprehensible. Thank you. It's incomprehensible, unfair, and long overdue for an overhaul. I'm very glad to see that there's some movement on this issue in the legislature, but that funding formula has plagued our schools and shortchanged our students for far too long. When the state incentivized regionalization of schools, districts were promised fully funded transportation. That promise hasn't been kept, and towns have been forced to make cuts and pass override after override to compensate. This is unaffordable and unsustainable. It has drastic repercussions on town budgets and personal wallets, and forces towns to make impossible choices between the budgetary needs of families and the education of their children. And since the benefits of free full-day kindergarten are indisputable, it is quite frankly astonishing that in this day and age, 2 of our towns still don't offer it. We can and we must do better here in Massachusetts, where we have always been leaders. We had the first public library, the first public school, and we're the first to offer universal health care. It's time to think big and move beyond our current state of chronic short-termism if we want to see this district thrive from its classrooms to its clam flats. Absolutely. Just yesterday, I attended the Ipswich Cask and Clam Festival, a celebration of that most iconic local mollusk. I couldn't, that's a tongue twister, by the way. I couldn't help but worry about the future of that industry and the growing effects of climate change on our ability to sustain it. Hundreds of local families depend directly on clamming for their livelihoods. For countless others who participate in the restaurant and tourism industry, our environment is an essential component of our regional economy. It's time to come to terms with the realities of climate change. We need to assess our vulnerability, plan for flooding and extreme weather, and protect our homes, buildings, infrastructure, local economy, and way of life. At less than 100 feet above sea level, our coastal district really is on the front lines of climate change. We can ignore it and pay lip service to it every so often, or we can come together around this defining issue of our generation, harness the expertise of the scientific community, invest in our environment as an investment in the economy, and become a model for climate resiliency for the rest of the country. It's also time to build on the success of entrepreneurial partnerships that have borne out in fact what they proposed in theory. The Life Sciences Initiative is an innovative program of significant strategic investments that added thousands of jobs across the economic spectrum over a 10-year period and made Massachusetts the global leader in this growing and highly paid industry. We are now the #1 state per capita in life sciences employment and investment, and nearly all of the major global life sciences companies now have a presence here in our state. Such programs require leaders who recognize and are willing to invest in the potential growth and opportunity that this sector represents. The incumbent voted against this initiative when it was adopted in 2008. We should be grateful others didn't follow his lead, or we would have missed an enormous economic opportunity. And I'm not sure how many times this needs to be said, but it's also time to unapologetically, loudly, and consistently support common sense gun laws. They protect our children, mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers. Such regulations do not violate our freedoms any more than seatbelts in cars or fences around swimming pools violate our freedoms to drive or swim. Gun safety regulations should be treated as a nonpartisan public health issue. My opponent has long enjoyed an A rating from the NRA. I would instead work every day to earn an A rating from the families of this district. The divisive rhetoric surrounding this issue is nothing more than just that, divisive rhetoric. And it's time to stop pandering to those who spread such toxic language and is aligned instead with the majority of citizens, including law-abiding gun owners, who support regulations that promote gun safety. We must do this not for political reasons, but for moral ones. It's also beyond time to unconditionally defend every woman's right to make her own reproductive and health care decisions. It's time to ensure that access to affordable reproductive health care, education, and contraception is universal and non-negotiable. My opponent voted in favor of abstinence-only sex education, in favor of mandatory waiting periods for abortions, and against the Safe Access Bill, which ensures protections at healthcare clinics from those who would intimidate or harass patients. It's no wonder he has the lowest possible score from Planned Parenthood, and it's entirely unacceptable. It's also time to address soaring healthcare costs, which are crippling town, personal, school, and state budgets. And it's time to recognize that our healthcare system itself is unhealthy. It's time to make absolutely certain that our most vulnerable citizens, our seniors, our children, those living in poverty and from paycheck to paycheck, have access to healthcare services and the medicines they need. People need to know that they can stay functional, go to work, and take care of their families. Our healthcare system has become a burdensome and confusing barrier rather than a support to our fundamental quality of life. Every legislature in the country, all 50 of them, should be sounding the alarm on the cost of healthcare. As Beacon Hill grapples with this complex issue, I will work to communicate effectively with my constituents to demystify the landscape and their healthcare options within it. Beacon Hill often feels a million miles away, but it shouldn't, and it's time that our representatives connect us with the decisions made on our behalf. I believe that a healthy society asks itself critical questions and engages with complex issues in a mature and civil manner. I am running for this office because I believe we are living in extraordinary times that call for each of us to bring our power and agency, our skills and gifts, directly into the civic process itself. We live in a truly spectacular district. Our towns are rightfully so proud of their rich history, their open spaces, and their unique charm and character. As your next representative, I will work with you every day to imagine and build a future of which all of us, from our youngest children to our eldest seniors and all of us in between, can be equally proud. It's time to elect a new leader for state representative in the 4th Essex District, and I hope you'll join me. Thank you.